The Black Ship, Chapter 50. Hastrung system Noir Navio docked with Hago's shipyard. Wyatt hit the mat with enough force to feel his bones rattle. The familiar sensation was now etched into his mind as a most unwelcome guest, but one that he no longer dreaded as much. As he opened his eyes, his chest heaving with the need for air, he heard the pained strain of Raquel Otillo as she was planted right next to him. To his right, he saw a heaving Leopold Dakar, clutching his stomach after receiving a tender tap from the red-armored woman. Noltar Olkara fared no better, as he was splayed over the mat, surely contemplating his existence. Gregor Undaj, for his part, was by far the most dignified among the group, barely able to remain on all fours as he, too, heaved for precious oxygen. Finally, the latest addition to Cynthia's torture training routine, Declan Oakmoon, was in the process of getting his ass handed to him for the 20th time. Wyatt was able to focus on his friend as Declan charged forth, throwing a punch aimed at her face. Cynthia didn't dodge it. She blocked it with laughable ease before, in a strafing motion, closing the distance between them. He could hardly follow what happened next, but there was no need to, as Declan was suddenly lifted from the ground, spun around, then planted on the mat with a heavy thud that expelled the air in his stomach. "Again!" Cynthia commanded, unrepentant, as she took her position at the center of their training field, patiently waiting for her 6 victims to recover and stand up. "I feel like I'm going to die, sir," muttered Raquel as she tried and failed to roll over. "That would be a mercy," Wyatt replied as he managed to roll over and then raise to a knee. "If you have time to complain, you have time to train." "On your feet, Staples!" Cynthia bellowed, crossing her arms. Wyatt groaned but obeyed the command, shaking away the lingering tingling of pain as he stood on his feet. Gregor followed suit with Noltar and Raquel joining him soon after. Leopold tried but failed as he was still clutching his stomach. He'd need some more time to recover, and Declan was in no position to join them this round so soon. Cynthia didn't seem to care as she reminded them that she was an immovable object they had no hope of defeating. Trying to attack all at once never worked. Ever since his business on his barony was settled, and things were more or less in the hands of people he'd entrusted to manage it on his behalf, Cynthia had wasted no time in resuming their training regime with 5 additions, in the form of the composters and Declan. Originally, only his fellow squadmates were to become, in Cynthia's words, her new toys. But Declan had proven himself enough to be not only worthy of trust, but skilled enough to warrant Cynthia's tender attention upon him after a display of his skills with the sword. He, alongside everyone, only wore a tank top, shorts, and bandages around their wrists and ankles, while Cynthia remained in full armor. It was unfair, but he wasn't about to question the blue-haired woman's methods and gain extra attention. Not again, anyway. He didn't even care about the onlookers glancing at the now usual sight of him becoming intimate with the floor. Shaking his head, he focused on the task at hand. The exercise was simple. Land a hit on her. Not her armor, but her face. The problem arose immediately. How, by all that was good and sweet, were they supposed to hit her in a single targeted location? They've tried overwhelming her several times. Raw numbers were a strength in and of themselves, right? Cynthia replied by taking them out in the blink of an eye simultaneously every damn time they tried that tactic. She was a harsh teacher, but not cruel. Well, not that cruel. Who am I lying to? She feeds on our pain and misery. I wonder if she can taste it, Wyatt thought while trying to find a new angle for attack. He found none. With a silent lunge, Gregor moved first, tackling from the side. Almost immediately after, Noltar stepped in with his guard up. Wyatt and Raquel shared a glance before bolting toward the smirking, blue-eyed bodyguard. While he chose the frontal approach, Raquel ran behind her, planning to use her blind spot against her. He watched as she merely stepped back and grabbed Gregor's right wrist. Without losing his momentum, Gregor was suddenly swept off his feet and flung to the side, landing with a heavy thud as he rolled away. Noltar was next. Instead of grabbing him, Cynthia used a finger to block one of his punches before smacking his belly. The handsome man's eyes widened as the air escaped his stomach and he fell on his back, defeated. He was next as he closed the distance, throwing a punch followed by another to her right. After their many training sessions, he'd learn a few tells his friend used constantly, like how she tended to dodge to her right most of the time, how she favored pivoting on her left heel, or that she rarely ducked. Unsurprisingly, his knowledge was of little use against the monster that was Cynthia Winfield. She dodged to her right, unsurprised by his following attempt. Instead, she lightly tripped him over, taking advantage of his forgotten balance and footing. To make matters worse, she made a quick sidestep, grabbed the back of his neck, and pushed him forward in time for him to collide with Raquel. The bronze-skinned woman tried to stop herself, but it was too late to avoid the impact. Thankfully, Wyatt managed to avoid headbutting her in the face, but their meeting was hard. "Ugh!" Wyatt groaned as Rachel followed with an undignified "Ugh!" as their combined momentum suddenly collided and ended in a brutal encounter that tossed them to the floor, with Wyatt landing on his back and Raquel face-planting on the mat next to him. Again. How many times must I repeat myself? Reckless attacks are only effective against inferior opponents and are the last resort of the impudent and cornered. You are neither, and I'm not beneath you. Must I break your bones for this lesson to be learned? Cynthia asked as she crossed her arms while glaring down at her fallen trainees. What do you expect from us, Lady Cynthia? Raquel was the first to counter as she weakly rose to a knee in order to stare at the blue-haired woman. We're nowhere near your level of expertise and prowess. Not to mention, we lack the quality of implants and gene enhancements that you have. Not to sound rude, but your training is closer to sadism, Lady Cynthia. Leopold joined in while still clutching his stomach. Be glad that you're not receiving your one-on-one sessions at Wyatt's level just yet, Cynthia replied with an eerie undertone that made everyone's skin crawl. As fighter pilots, first and foremost, you must work as a unit in and outside your formations. On the ground, a similar approach must be followed. I am here to make you the best I can within reason and without killing you so that you may stand strong on your own against any foe. More so in these tumultuous times. You're not Marines except for Oakmoon, but you all must be able to fight. Her eyes narrowed as she stared at Wyatt. I believe Baron Staples made a clear example already, has he not? I say this with all the respect I can muster, but we're not nearly as valiant or driven as Sir Wyatt is, said Gregor as he rose to his feet. Insane. The word you're looking for is insane, Greg, Noltar said as he joined his friend's side. Our boss over there is clinically insane, he joked with a smirk. My lord is peculiar, but it only elevates him as a man worthy of service, Declan proclaimed, recovered. Raquel stood up and offered Wyatt a hand. He took it, and with a pull, he was on his ass and then on his feet. Ready, sir? Wyatt nodded, looking at his comrades and Declan with a tiny smile on his lips. Then he turned to Cynthia, and his focus returned. Just when he was about to make the first move, he stopped. The whisper of an idea came to him. It was vague, but it was there. Cynthia had proved time and time again that attacking at the same time wouldn't work. Assaulting from different angles worked to a point, but she was impossibly stronger and faster than any of them. Facing her one by one was a guaranteed way to end kissing the mat. As much as he complained about it, in truth, he appreciated every lesson his blue-haired friend imparted on them. Noltar had said so before. To learn from a Winfield was a privilege few could boast about. Her lessons had saved his life at least a dozen times aboard the gallant venture and allowed him to achieve a victory he otherwise would have never considered possible. Her training had increased in difficulty, mainly aimed at him, but now that he no longer had problems managing his strength, he could do more. Then there was what Cynthia said. They were all fighter pilots. Part of the same squadron. Declan was the odd one out, but perhaps that was the solution he was looking for. At a hit, that was the goal. To land a hit on her face with the intent to do real harm. Then he realized their mistake. They worked together, yes, but they were largely uncoordinated, focusing individually on the goal rather than collectively. The idea exploded in his mind with the force of a tactical mine. Wait! Wyatt shouted, freezing everyone in their place. As all eyes turned to him, he took a step back and made a gesture for his teammates to join him. A few seconds later, they were gathered around him. Turning to Declan, he asked in a hushed tone, Declan, have you led combat formations before? I have, sir, Declan answered in a matching tone while the composters looked on, puzzled. Against stronger forces than your own? Wyatt pressed on. Not exactly. But before the coup started, I took part in several surgical strikes against insurrectionist outposts and a pirate den, sir, he confessed, not understanding where his lord was thinking. Still, he wasn't going to question him either. Wyatt frowned, deep in thought. After a long moment of silence, he hummed deeply. What would you do to take down a superior enemy unit? Boss, what are you doing? Leopold asked, perplexed, while the rest of the composters exchanged confused glances. We're fighting without coordination, he revealed. But we're fighting together for the same objective, Raquel pointed out. Fighting together but uncoordinated. Leaderless. Without a plan, Gregor summarized, crossing his arms. Sir Wyatt, are you suggesting I give you and your squad mates orders? Declan asked, baffled. Wyatt nodded. I'm sorry, but why? You're our leader, Wyatt. You could guide us if what we're lacking is coordination, Nultar protested. We're not in fighters, Nultar. Maybe I can lead us, but Cynthia knows me. She'll expect me to use dogfighting strategies against her. He turned to Declan. But she won't expect a combination of tactics. 6 heads turned to a patiently waiting Cynthia, ready to impart more lessons unto them. Then, to her surprise, they huddled together tightly. Half a minute later, the 6 began to move, but she immediately noticed that they were no longer loosely united. Instead, they acted as one, moving with calculated steps as they formed a semicircle in front of her. A moment later, Raquel and Leopold moved in simultaneously with the intent to throw a punch. Their defenses were ignored in favor of maintaining their speed. Then, just as she was about to counter them, they stopped and changed their approach. She could see it in slow motion, their muscles tensing and relaxing, their joints adjusting for the shift in weight and momentum. Still outside her immediate reach, Leopold lunged for her feet while Raquel did a roundhouse kick. Not an unfamiliar strategy, but one that worked nicely. She evaded Leopold with a simple sidestep, and at the same time she caught Raquel's foot. Twisting it, she broke her balance and quickly spun her over to avoid damaging her tendons or rupturing a muscle. With a heavy impact, she dropped Raquel onto Leopold's back. The two groaned while she was already moving to face the next target in the shape of Nultar. Maintaining his favored high guard stance, he moved in, but something was different. He jumped from one side to another, not really committing to attack, yet advancing all the same. That's when she saw Gregor and Wyatt moving in from the sides. She smiled. Now it all made sense. They were employing a squadron formation designed to corner and destroy a high-priority target. Raquel and Leopold had acted as decoys, while Nultar acted as the main danger to focus on, while the other two moved in for the kill. It was a good move, but one she was more than ready to counter. Then, as she shifted her focus to send Wyatt to the ground again, their attack pattern shifted abruptly. Nultar committed to a forward attack as Declan rushed in, pretending to hold onto a sword. Cynthia was taken by surprise, but it lasted a fraction of a second before she readjusted her position. Using her right heel as a pivot, she turned to confront Nultar when suddenly, Leopold, not knocked out of combat as she'd predicted, tried to grab her left ankle. If he'd grab her, then she would likely break his arm or rip it off thanks to her momentum. Instead of stopping, she used her upper body to turn slightly faster while at the same time using her right index finger to press against the mat, thereby controlling her speed. Bending back as 3 attackers moved in, not simultaneously but only nearly so, she was left with no other option but to face them one at a time in a plank position as she faced the ceiling, supported only by her right leg. Stretching out her left arm, she planted a firm but controlled palm strike on Nultar's belly. Immediately, with the impact of his momentum against her body, she used it to propel herself into the air with her right foot. It only launched her a couple of inches off the ground, but that was all the free rein she needed to twist her body around, landing with her right hand to support her balance at the same time she tossed Nultar to block Wyatt's advance. Cynthia, the dreaded bloodrend, was amused. To have been pushed so was worth praising, but they weren't done yet. Gregor, in an attempt to take advantage of her vulnerable state, had correctly shifted his approach from a punch to a kick aimed at her face. She'd been clear in her instructions, don't hold back. Likewise, the threat of harsh punishment if they landed a hit, and she felt they were holding back, motivated them not to underperform. Regardless, she captured Gregor's ankle and, with a precise tug, threw him off balance. Letting go of his ankle as he fell, she quickly dropped to the ground with the grace of a cat, her agility betraying her weight and that of her armor commanded. With a quick roll, she found herself on a knee before capturing Declan's wrist a second later, no less than half an arm's length away from her face. She pulled him in close, only to then gently tap his stomach. That only left Wyatt standing. Turning to her left, she saw his left fist closing in. Raising her left hand with the intent of catching his wrist, Cynthia was caught off guard when Wyatt pulled in his fist as fast as he could. Then she saw that his entire body was already turning in the opposite direction, launching a wide, arcing attack. She followed his right arm as it moved through the air, realizing that she wouldn't be able to block him in time as she was now. The impact of his fist connecting against her left cheek was heavy and powerful. She could feel the strength of the kinetic force being halted by her face. A decisive blow meant to do real harm to his enemy. It was made all the more evident as the sound of bones breaking so much like dry sticks snapping underfoot in protest to the sudden halt. Wyatt fell to his knees, clutching his right ruined wrist and staring at the limp, oddly bent fingers of his hand. It didn't hurt. There was discomfort, but no pain. Not yet. "You hit me," Cynthia muttered as she stared at Wyatt. "I wish I hadn't," Wyatt protested, rotating his right arm over a few times, watching in dreaded fascination as his now pulverized hand was reduced to a sack of flesh, blood, and shattered bones. Slowly he turned his gaze to her. "Cynthia, what are you made of?" "You hit me!" Cynthia repeated, ignoring his question, before firmly but gently grabbing him by the shoulders as she stood up, forcing him to do the same. She was smiling widely, her eyes full of approval. "Wyatt, you hit me!" "And will forever regret it," Wyatt protested in a disheartened tone. My hand." Cynthia, unable to stop smiling, turned to where two of the concealed Royal Marines stood, knowing full well they were as surprised as the many other onlookers now staring at their training area in sheer disbelief. One by one, the composters gathered around, most of them wincing when they saw Wyatt's right hand. "We make post-haste! My lord requires medical treatment!" Declan exclaimed after seeing the results of their victory. "Training dismissed," Cynthia said, regaining some of her composure. "Take Wyatt to the medical wing immediately." Not a second later, her order was followed as General Staff approached, trying to hand out water to the group, but were promptly ignored as they made their way outside the gymnasium. The red-armored woman stood there for several long moments before reaching for her bruised cheek. Her smile returned. "I know what I saw, but I have to know. Did you let him hit you?" a voice called out inside her head. "No, Gaston." "He landed that punch fairly," she replied after connecting to the network. "You do realize Milcades will pester you about it for weeks to come," said the second Royal Marine. "I'm fully aware, Atuccio. This time, however, I believe I'll allow him to have his fun. Go." "Return to your regular duties," Cynthia ordered, before beginning to make her way out of the gymnasium. With the day's training cut short, she decided it was prudent to visit Redford and inform him personally of what had happened. Alone, she made her way to Redford's quarters, ignoring the crew members who came across her way. Only a week had passed since their integration, but she still couldn't get used to the presence of more Ikanti on board. Arriving at her destination, she announced her presence, and the door opened to let her in. The moment the door closed, the older man sitting behind his desk made his voice known without tearing his attention from the data pad he was holding. "I received a most curious report regarding one Wyatt Staples. Almost every bone in his right hand snapped, broke, or received at least a severe fracture, including his wrist. The report also mentioned his injuries were self-inflicted. Is this true?" Her smile returning, Cynthia turned her head slightly, presenting her offended cheek. "See for yourself, old man." Wyatt's fist connected. His injuries were the result of their success. Redford put his datapad down upon hearing her explanation. Immediately, he noticed the still visible red mark on her cheek and what appeared to be the formation of a tiny bruise that would be gone by tomorrow at the same time. "He hit you?" he asked, his voice a mixture of amazement and disbelief. "Not alone, but yes, he did. They worked together well," Cynthia revealed as she took one of the available seats in front of his desk. The chair groaned slightly, but it held. "I believe Wyatt was able to combine fighter formation techniques and marine tactics, most likely with the aid of Declan Oakmoon. They changed their approach mid-fight, forcing me to adapt quickly and throw me out of balance for but a moment. A rather impressive feat if I do say so myself." Redford smirked. "What am I hearing? Cynthia Winfield, overwhelmed by a mere pilot squadron and a standard Marine?" Cynthia's smile widened slightly, and her lips parted to show her teeth. Wyatt already showcased a remarkable talent for adaptability. He may not be talented with handheld melee weapons, but he leans into his strengths to compensate for his shortcomings in order to achieve victory. The fears many harbor regarding him are well-founded. If he were an ambitious, power-hungry man, he'd be a force to be reckoned with as he is now. Touching her cheek, she nodded once in approval. "I cannot wait to see what he'll become with further training and enhancements." Redford didn't reply immediately. Instead, his expression turned serious and quizzical. Several seconds later, he spoke. "He's an anomaly, Cynthia. Few true detractors remain aboard the Noir Navio. Some even respect him for his actions. Others envy him. Most fear him. I fear that if he continues to ascend, no matter if he deserves to be rewarded or not, danger will befall him and those close to his heart. Cynthia's smile dropped, crossing her arms. Do you think he may be pulled from his position and assigned to another vessel due to his rank? Redford hummed deeply. It is a possibility I've considered. But as he is now, he's nowhere near ready to command his own ship outside battle. And standard Royal Navy protocols and rules of engagement are anathema to his unorthodox tactics and on-the-moment decision-making. He paused for a moment, taking in a deep inhale through his nose. But the threat remains. I've yet to talk with the prince directly, but I know many are not happy with Wyatt's meteoric escalation in influence, power, rank, and authority. How many view him as a threat? In their place, I would share those views myself. They could force the prince's hand and relocate him if many of them agree on the matter with sufficient pressure. Now it was Cynthia's turn to hum deeply and scowl. He can't afford the discontent of his council and officers if they're united in a single point of interest. Already Wyatt is favored immensely. If that favoritism continues to grow, the envious detractors may try to remove him from Clara's side one way or another. A displeased snarl came from her throat. They would have him charge in a miserable ship to his death or relegate him to irrelevancy, so his threat is neutralized and their own remains intact. For what? So they can continue to play their games at their leisure? The nobility despises any abrupt change that isn't dictated by their hands. Most wish conflicts to end quickly simply because it disturbs their power balance. It is a never-ending circle that breeds stagnation and a choking status quo. The principality is blighted by it, Redford declared with disdain. Careful, old man. Some may call you a traitor for holding such opinions, said Cynthia in a joking tone. The ghost of a smile formed on Redford's lips before his serious expression returned. What of the others? Are your toys to your liking after testing them these past weeks? They aren't terrible, that much I'll admit. Wyatt proves to be a positive influence on them, even though he is entirely unaware of that fact. Cynthia shook her head. Leopold Dakar is an interesting individual. No talent for the sword, but competent with the axes during individual sessions. He's also not very talented with hand-to-hand techniques, but has an inclination for grappling moves. Nultar Olkara, on the other hand, is capable with the sword, and his reckless approach to combat is both an advantage and a detriment. I'll have to beat that way of thinking out of him. Raquel Otillo is nimble, quick on her feet, and goes for the kill. Her weapon of choice is the knife, though she's a lackluster fighter. Gregor Undaj was a surprise. He is trained in fencing for duels and is capable with a sword, but in melee combat he's next to useless. He's even worse than Wyatt in that aspect, and his hand-to-hand proficiency is abysmal. He's the worst of the group. However, his spatial awareness is polished and doesn't falter easily, she said, humming gently. And, finally, Declan Oakmoon. He's an excellent Marine and well-trained. His skill with the sword is commendable. With more training, he may turn into a RO SF. Have you told Clara any of this yet? Redford asked, raising an eyebrow. Do you truly believe I would be able to keep their development a secret from her? One pertaining to her elite fighter squadron? Cynthia replied in an unamused tone. Redford smirked. Even Oakmoon? He's Wyatt's knight. Of course she'll want to know. She ended her reply with a chuckle. With her report done, she leaned closer. Say, Redford, are you comfortable having so many Ikanti on board? The gray-haired man raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware that they made you feel uncomfortable, Cynthia. They don't. It's not discomfort, at least not entirely. They aren't like Jincho and his group. They escaped from the hierarchy. The Drazan took them. Can we trust them? She asked in a serious tone. They are being monitored, but out of the 235 convinced by Jincho to join our crew, none have displayed anything but vitriol and hatred for their home nation. Clara welcomed them. I have my reservations about employing so many aliens in one ship, but it is her ship and her decision. I've already assigned them to menial duties, such as support technicians and mechanics, and incorporated those with military training into the auxilia. Francesco Arcadi was more than happy to accept a dozen of them into his company. Redford sighed tiredly. I'd rather have Royal Army elements, but these mercenaries will have to do, and, to their credit, they have proven their worth. Cynthia chuckled again. Clara had little faith in them from the start. Just numbers, but it is as you say, old man. They've proved themselves to be somewhat competent. she sighed, leaning back. I'll be mindful of the Icanti from now on. I don't like that insolent flightless bird much, but his skills and talent cannot be denied. What does Clara see in him, I dare not ask. A most fortunate discovery, is it not? Redford agreed with a jovial tone. I've never seen an engineer of his skill, genius, and passion in my entire life. His desires and intrigues drive him onward in such ways that are incomprehensible to all but himself. He doesn't bother to hide any of it. Thanks to him, the repairs have progressed without delay, not to mention his dozens of projects running simultaneously. I still don't understand how he manages to keep his mind intact. Oh, Redford, do you truly believe there is any semblance of sanity left within his mind? He calls my princess Pretty Eyes, and she allows him to indulge in his disrespect, Cynthia protested. It is no wonder that he and Wyatt have a fondness for each other. Maniacs. They are maniacs, siblings who transcend species. Is that envy I detect in your voice? Hungry eyes? Redford asked in a playful tone with a witty smirk to match. Cynthia narrowed her eyes at the aged commander before letting out a controlled sigh. Before I leave you to your work, old man, I'd like to suspend Wyatt's training until his hand recovers in 2 or 3 days. Your paradoxical protege and disciple will be yours to torment until then, she countered, and smiled when Redford closed his eyes at the mention of his now most disliked word. The blade that is your tongue knows where to cut, I see, Hungry Eyes, Redford countered, much to Cynthia's lack of amusement. However, you've presented me with the opportunity to order a full physical evaluation to be performed on him. Enough time has passed for his implants and enhancements to have fully integrated. He must receive the Exceeder, Intara, and Ledium implants, and given his rank, the Capillu Deluxia enhancement will be necessary. Cynthia tilted her head. I don't think he'll appreciate that particular gene enhancement. It's not his choice to make, Redford said, idly passing a hand through his hair. His house is truly nascent. There are no historical or traditional considerations that stand against it. He will receive as a man befitting of his rank. Cynthia let out a laugh before standing up. It was good to see you for more than a brief moment, old man. However, I must make haste. Your dear unhinged niece, no doubt, has been informed of what happened. She is surely waiting for my arrival as we speak. I can stall for time no longer, she said as a gentle smile adorned her lips. Then don't keep her waiting, Redford commented, matching her smile. A few moments later she left, leaving him alone once more. Returning to his datapad, he admired the visage of the Noir Navio as the final exterior repairs went underway. His eyes flickered as he connected to the network. Galt, inform Master Technician Jincho that he is allowed to proceed with priority retrofit Wolfpack. Understood, Commander. Sir, if I may, is this related to the gymnasium's incident? Galt asked curiously. The entire crew already knows, don't they? Redford asked tiredly. Indeed so, Commander, Galt replied in an apologetic tone. Should I implement a communications blockade? Her Majesty is silent on the matter. Let it spread freely. That would be all, Redford replied before killing the link. Alone, he allowed a sensation that had long left his heart stir in it once more. Hope. Can you write? How would you like to write a Black Ship fan story? I've chatted to Akinda about this, and we'd love to read your stories or even just your concepts and ideas written out and shared. You never know, we could make some of them into side stories on the channel. All you need to do is go to r/openhfy on Reddit and post your story. That's it. We look forward to reading what you come up with.